Welcome back, everyone, to the StarLadder and iLeague StarSeries Season number 3. I'm D2. With me is Firebat. We are 2 matches down, Firebat. 3 more to go today, and we're getting ready for our next one, which is going to be between Fr0zen of the United States and Naiman of Kazakhstan. Pretty good one coming up here. As always, all these players are just really big names.
Yeah, Fr0zen just coming off the back of a second place at the Hearthstone Championship Tour in the Bahamas, qualifying himself for the World Championship. So he's looking to try and continue adding to that resume, whereas Naiman, he hasn't had too many super recent tournament results, but his whole team has always done well in StarLadder. You know, you talk about StarLadder Season 2, Dr. Hippie and Naiman of Virtus Pro were both at the LAN finals, and I think they might have even both been in the finals together or very close to it. So
Yeah,
it's a tournament they always do well in, and they're hoping to try and continue doing that here today. And whoa, no Paladin or Rogue for Fr0zen. He's doing something different. We've seen most players in the tournament and most players in Hearthstone tournaments in general lately all have Druid, Paladin, and Rogue, and all ban Rogue, which a little bit of a shakeup here. Naiman doesn't have a Rogue to ban, so he goes with a Warrior ban from Fr0zen. What do you think Fr0zen is doing with this kind of off-the-wall lineup?
Well, I'm not going to make the mistake of giving away players' cards anymore by cheating and looking at their decks. This is interesting. So there's not a lot of directions you can go with the priest. Actually, I do remember having just taken a peek at the shaman earlier. It is a slightly different shaman. Not something as off the wall as we saw earlier with Bunny Hopper. So, you know, a little bit of a different strategy. Isn't going, you know, for your standard priest, standard shaman, standard druid, that kind of thing.
Being an NA player myself and understanding the North American ladder, I have a feeling this is a token druid from Fr0zen. I feel like it's going to be token druid. I just feel it. But Fr0zen is a player that loves the huge ramp druid, the Asharj Cobra. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, just all the ramp.
Yeah,
in there.
He brought that kind of druid to DreamHack Austin recently. I think he was just didn't make top 8 on tiebreakers. He was he's one of those players that consistently does well in the Swiss sort of things. But opening up here, we have the Dragon Priest versus the mid-range Paladin or N'Zoth Paladin from Naiman. We'll have to see a little bit more cards before we can really narrow it down. But his teammate Dr. Hippie was rocking the N'Zoth Paladin, so that might be a trend that he holds to.
Yeah, both of them, even looking at, I think it was, wait, so Naiman was running, excuse me, I'm getting the Virtus Pro players mixed up. Dr. Hippie was running the N'Zoth Paladin, but then Bunny Hopper was running the mid-range Murloc Paladin?
Right, so he could go either direction with it, really.
But nothing like, you know, an aggro sort of Murloc. But, pretty standard stuff here from Fr0zen on his side. We do see Sunkeeper Tarim, so I'll already see a little bit of a divergence regardless of where we're going here with Naiman.
Right. The Sunkeeper Tarim typically favors the more mid-range builds because you can use it offensively and defensively. A lot of the times the slower paladins, you know, the N'Zoth paladins, won't be able to utilize Sunkeeper Tarim as effectively because they're not on the board anyway because they're such a slow deck. So we have to assume it's maybe more mid-range at this point. And Fr0zen, clearly just a Dragon Priest. We could tell that right off the bat. Look at his hand, chock full of dragons. And he's going to tempo out the 2/3 there to contest the 1/1.
And it's your card, the Curious Glimmerroot. We found it.
Yeah, the Curious Glimmerroot is it's an interesting card. It's definitely quite powerful against the slower control decks because you have time to just play a vanilla 3/3 and then take not the greatest card in the world and wiggle it into some sort of value game plan. But it's not a very strong, you know, tempo card. It's not great at trying to close out games.
I love how Curious Glimmerroot has just completely blown. It's ruined more casters and even players than just because they forget. Wait, this isn't Discover. It's like you can't take that card. But,
yeah. It's just a card that is in their deck, and it is almost always a class card. Very, 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 very rarely is it not a class card. So True Silver Champion, bang. That is a powerful card to get off Curious Glimmerroot. Absolutely
That's a good one.
And one of the also important things to note about the Curious Glimmerroot is that it's from their deck at the beginning of the game, not from their deck currently. So you can't do things like keep Tyrion off the mulligan so they can't discover it off Glimmerroot. That won't work. It still has the same odds of finding it because it's just your initial deck at the start of the game rather than whatever the state of your deck is when you play the Glimmerroot.
Yeah, and if it conversely, if the game starts going to fatigue, there's no pressure for you to play it before they run out of cards.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And we see the Shadowward Pain come out here. This plays around Blessing of Kings.
Yeah. And doesn't...
And around Consecrate. So
yeah,
plays around 2 of the potential turn 4 plays from Naiman. Fr0zen's just trying to lock down the board so he can snowball it. He just wants to be able to have as much freedom as possible going forward, and he doesn't find that the Shadowward Pain's going to get too much increasing value other than that.
Yeah, I can't really argue with him there. And the thing is, even though Dragon Priest has a bit more control elements than it did back in the last iteration of it, it's still a list that really just thrives on getting on the board. As does Priest. There's so many control elements, but it feels like a deck, or feels like a class, excuse me, that really thrives on getting on the board because its hero power is so powerful if you can do so.
Mm-hmm. And he's firmly on the board. And the Shadowward Pain play makes it so Naiman continues to have kind of awkward turns. He would have liked to have just, Consecrate on turn 4 if the Shadowward Pain hadn't come out, clearing the entire board, leading into, Aldor plus Hydrologist. And that, even though it was a Shadowward Pain on a 1/4, is the reason why his hand's so awkward right now.
Yeah, but awkward as it may be, that is a ton of value. Aside Naiman even gets redemption here potentially to pair with a Tyrion on turn 8 after you've already, or excuse me, on turn 9 after you've already played a Tyrion on turn 8. The question for Naiman here is he might be considering if he needs to get some tempo out here because of so much value he already has.
Yeah, the Noble Sacrifice could help set up the Sunkeeper Tarim a little bit better, so there's some consideration of that as well. Because although his hand is very, very valuable, he could find himself getting out-tempoed and just dying. There's no equality in his hand currently. If he lets the Priest snowball the board too much, he could run into trouble.
Yeah, I mean, the old joke, right? You can't use all that value in your hand when your face is dead. So, well, gonna hold on to the redemption. Has that for a later turn and has stuff to do from here on out. So it looks like he's probably on his path down, going for that Tyrion and redemption on turn 9. Yeah,
those are good.
Those are all pretty good. And we do see that Naiman is running the Murloc package. Obviously, Hydrologist is something you could find regardless.
So he is running mid-range Murloc Paladin. The equality is taken for Fr0zen. He wants to be able to control this game. He's not looking to try and just strictly tempo Naiman out. He wants to take the game longer, is what he's saying with that pick. Which makes sense in my mind because he did see the Finja there. So he's like, all right, you don't have that much top end. You're not running his Zoth or anything. And boy, does he in for a treat.
All right, this might be just... I was going to go ahead and Consecrate.
Yeah, it kills 2 of the minions off there. He's just trying to slow it down. It sets up for the Curator on the next turn if Fr0zen opts not to heal. Seems okay. He wants to save Tarim for an even greater situation. The usage of Fr0zen's Pain earlier could also make Naiman believe that there's an additional Shadowward Pain because Pain's extremely powerful in the matchup, and utilizing it on a 1/4, although it did kind of work out to help Fr0zen play around a few things, it's still a low-impact usage of the card. And if your Tarim gets Shadowward Pained after you play it on that turn 6, you're in a world of hurt.
Well, Fr0zen has a bit of a decision here. The Deathwing Dragonlord, sometimes you don't want to have it because you'd rather just get the battle cries off of the minions or the dragons in hand. So just go for the Malagos instead. And plays good old Twilight Drake. But now we're coming into some of the power turns here for Naiman. He can Curator if he wants to. Well, it depends on how much stuff he has in his deck, where he could overdraw, I suppose. Since he's at 8 right now, if he draws 3, he goes to 10.
Yeah. Sunkeeper Tarim is still threatened by the potential of Shadowward Pain or Bookworm, so that's
But he does get rid of a 4/7 right off the bat.
Right.
Though he makes the Nether Spite Historian bigger.
Yeah. And he has the Redemption, so he could kill 2 of the minions out there, assuming the Shadow Word Pain or Bookworm comes along, and you have to expect those things. The other play is Curator, and then you can't really kill anything, but you try and get the trade with the 5/4, hopefully.
Yeah, the question for Naiman here, assuming that Curator doesn't overdraw him, can you survive to get all this value out? And I think this might be time for Sunkeeper plus the Redemption. Yeah, you don't get as much value out of it, but you...
I think you need to do it. Yeah, you got to slow down those 3/3s. He thinks he's got enough life that he can go Tyrion into Tyrion Redemption and not have to worry about it. The Bookworm's going to come down pushing 6 damage. Tyrion comes down. As long as there's no death for Tyrion, he's probably right. But a death for Tyrion pushing 9 gets pretty scary. And then after that, you have the double Tyrion, which you hope, allows you to live through the rest of the onslaught.
So it looks like he did the math, right? He was counting, okay, I'm going to take 6 this turn, even if there's, Shadow Word Pain or Bookworm. Then the following turn, I have the Tyrion that gets in the way. Probably, even if he has death, it's not the worst thing ever. Because I take a bit of damage, I'm not dead. But then I Tyrion after that into Redemption, and then he has to throw all of his minions into it, and then it comes back, and then he has to throw even more minions into it. And there's a Shadow Word Death after a couple of Shadow Visions. Certainly helps that they were all discounted.
So let's see. So this Tyrion dies, pushes 9, Naiman down to only 5 HP. If he goes with the Tyrion Redemption, then he is alive on board, technically.
All right, so if he goes for a Tyrion Redemption, he takes out one of these 3/3s. He's down to 2 health. The Historian trades in to the 3/3 and the 3/6 trade in, and then the Tyrion comes back. And to get through that, I guess okay. So yeah, on board he's alive, but Equality could come out, which means that if Naiman does go for that play, then the Historian trades in, you Equality, you kill it off.
He's still alive, yeah. There's just not enough attacks for Fr0zen. It doesn't matter the life total, right? So Tyrion Redemption, Equality, trade. You can only push 3.
The problem here for Naiman, right, is that what if that Equality is Consecration?
Sure, that's
then you just die.
Risk. He's going with the Light Lord, it seems. It's only 10 damage on the board for Fr0zen.
It's a nice attack onto the Radiant Elemental. Obviously, there's a lot of value in killing that, and on top of that, it makes it so that if your opponent trades in, you don't get a nice 3/3/2 into it.
Fr0zen needs 1 damage. He could find a Consecrate with a Dragnet Operative for lethal. He could also find a True Silver Champion.
He knows his opponent's playing it. He saw it with the Curious Glimmer.
Yeah. You could maybe even find a Blessing of Kings. It's got a few outs there. So I imagine he starts with the Operative. And it's not that much of an overcommitment under the board because you're discovering...
I think he's thinking, what happens if I miss, right?
Right.
It's like, do I need a Quality first? But then you don't have it
first, then you don't have
mana. You don't have any mana for Consecration, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So looks like he hasn't found it. Probably would have already snap picked it by now. Not like you hold it just to bluff, right? Because another Quality, these Murlocs don't really work too well. The question here is, does he trade?
I don't see trading being fantastic. You could maybe throw 1 damage into it to lower the odds of it healing, but other than that. And Naiman just needs an Equality, and he can bail himself out of this.
Oh!
That's it. That'll guarantee the heal on his face, restoring him up to 10, clearing the entire board. That's absolutely huge.
So that's happening. There's no other way to just even stay alive, so pretty much. And then from there, he has 4 mana. He could just play the Redemption, which is pretty good because your Rag comes back damaged and not equalitied.
Mm-hmm.
And then so it can actually heal itself back up to full in that situation.
Yeah. The opponent
could also
wants to kill it, so...
Yeah. You could also save the Redemption for Tyrion, but it seems pretty reasonable. The other thing is that if you play Redemption, you can't really hero power. So that's one thing to consider. So you could just go for a tempo, rock pool, and a hero power.
I like the redemption. But, yeah, that's what he's doing, just trying to get as many minions out there as possible. One of the reasons why I don't like this as much is because of the card Potion of Madness. You've just given your opponent a very easy one-mana way to deal with your Ragnaros Lightlord. Which is a reason why I favor not making the hero power. But Primordial Drake going to come down, cleaning that up, not reviving the Lightlord.
By the way, Fr0zen himself had gotten down to 10 health there, which is pretty scary.
Yeah.
So Naiman can go ahead and clear his opponent's Primordial Drake with his weapon and his own Primordial Drake, but he could also just go for that good old Tyrion redemption play again.
Yeah, I like that. I like the Tyrion redemption play and just ship the rock pool right into that Primordial Drake, sets up the trade with Tyrion, forces your opponent to have to heal it, and gets that rock pool out of the way for the Tyrion redemption. And plays around Shadow Madness, or Potion of Madness. It looks like he's going to clear it. He doesn't want the Priest hero power to be gaining any value. Gets that out of the way now. Knows that Priests really struggle with 4-attack minions, so it's one of the safest board development plays he could make on the turn.
Right. And gonna play the redemption this turn just to kind of bluff what it is, right?
Okay. Bluff Repentance, I guess.
Yeah, could be the case. Fr0zen's gonna go ahead and play Dragon Operative because not a whole lot else he's gonna do. Spike-Ridge Steed seems pretty good, so is Stonehill Defender.
Yeah, Spike-Ridge Steed can't be cast this turn. But he could just play the Twilight Drake this turn and have it for a future turn. It is just a great card in general. Yes.
He's also thinking, if I do pick the Spike-Ridge Steed, do I play it super safe and play the Twilight Drake next turn just so I can guaranteed get it off on like a bigger minion that actually can accomplish things rather than the Northshire Cleric, which doesn't have as much oomph to it?
Doesn't look like he's going to guarantee the Steed. Just playing out the Twilight Drake there. He feels the need to fight for board. He's at 12 life.
That is true.
Desperate times.
Yeah. Need to get something out there. And both players just on pins and needles, right? They're like, I could just die next turn, depending on what my opponent has.
Well, looks like it's about Tyrion time.
Yeah, you really need to protect yourself if you're Naiman here. And worst case scenario, your opponent clears off the Primordial Drake and gets that back rather than the Tyrion, but you still protect your face, so it's pretty good. Quality's kind of looming large here for Fr0zen, but he obviously didn't want to take that second quality. Was kind of forced to because the other options were pretty lackluster. The thing is, Naiman, the redemption was somewhat of a bluff. Obviously, like you mentioned, could be Repentance. But now if he decides to not hero power, kind of giving it away.
Well,
I just go for the hero power in the end.
Yeah,
So that he has taunts in the way. All right. Just taking my chances that one of these guys dies instead.
Yeah, if you're not suiciding the 1/3, then I think you definitely hero power. And
Yeah.
because you already have a Potion of Madness target, / a target they really want to kill for redemption anyway.
So Fr0zen has not attacked since his secret has come down, so it could still be Noble Sacrifice.
Right.
In his eyes, obviously.
He's got all the power.
But they're all in shields, and
Yeah.
they don't taunt. If only a powered shield gave +2 health and taunt. Oh my goodness.
Would be busted.
Alright, well, let's see what he can't find. Go ahead, Spiker Seed onto his Northshire Cleric just to get as much stuff in the way as possible. Got the Primordial Drake. That will come back as a 4/1. And let's see, is there any way to get through this? Aldor would win the game. That might win the game. Let's see, 6, 9, 10. A little bit off.
He can set his opponent down to 2 life because of the power of the Kodo here. Able to take down the Spike-Ridge Steed minion.
Yeah. But again, Naiman is very low himself, so he needs to make sure he selects a line of play where Fr0zen just doesn't kill him using something like Equality, which there are 2 Paladin cards in Fr0zen's hand right now.
Yeah, what Paladin cards would he have that he hadn't used yet? Quality is definitely one that kind of comes to mind.
It's the number 1 that comes to mind, I would say.
Yeah.
Otherwise, because for Fr0zen, his hand size is so small that you would, if you didn't pick Equality, you would pick something that you'd use right away, right? Mm-hmm. So, like for instance, he uses Spikeridge Steed in this situation. So, even something like a small Murloc, you just kind of throw out there. But, gonna see Kodo here, not gonna take any damage, and instead just gonna put himself back up to 8 here. And let's see, can Fr0zen pick up some sort of buff here to get the win? Because he can Equality and get through this Tyrion.
Oh, here we go.
3 damage buff.
Consecrate.
Yeah, Consecration would do it.
Truesome Champion? Nope. Sunkeeper, okay.
Well, he has to Sunkeeper.
Yeah.
Because it's the Curious Glimmer route.
Yep. So what does this do for him? Not a lot. I mean, it gets a 3/7 taunt, which is nice.
He can buff his Northshire Cleric.
The issue here is he still dies, right? The Ashbringer plus one of the minions, and then the all the other minions.
What if he can't Equality plus Sunkeeper? I was thinking maybe he could smack Naiman in the face so that Naiman couldn't use his base, but then it doesn't really matter, does it?
No, then Naiman's able to trade with all 3 minions into Sunkeeper Terram and then utilize his face for the killing blow. So he's going to look for an additional card off the Northshire Cleric here. Something that could save him.
That's a bit late.
Yeah.
Alright, so Naiman's able to take the game number 1 here.
Wow.
Fr0zen just a little bit short, and Naiman barely claws his way over the finish line.
Yeah. Those Equality picks did not end up working out for Fr0zen. I think if we look back at it, that's kind of what bit him in the butt. He was just so far ahead and didn't have Equality activators in his deck, and then ended up taking these Equalities that just rotted in his hand when he was so close to being able to finish Naiman. Just a little bit more pressure required. Maybe also overextending a little bit into the potential Equality Consecrate.
Yeah, there's a big difference between the cards that you take from your opponent in certain games, right? Obviously, Equality is pretty amazing, but the issue was Equality was going off against a couple of Murlocs, which you don't really want. They're synergistic with your opponent's second, not yours. So he was forced into the second Equality. Same thing kind of happens with Druid, right? You're looking at a bunch of Jade stuff and don't really want that. Meanwhile, if you're playing against something like Shaman, it's like, oh, I'll happily just take this Hex, thank you very much. And something like a Maelstrom Portal or Lightning Storm are pretty good as well. But in this case, doesn't work out. And Naiman gonna go back to his roots here and hit the face.
Yeah, and well played by Naiman last game, investing like just enough into the board where that Fr0zen wasn't killing him, so that he could just make it just barely to those Tyrions and Light Lords. The 8-drops in his hand. It's really close to being dead all game.
So this is an interesting matchup. Last expansion, very heavily favored for the Pirate Warrior. You typically run more things like Potion of Madness these days because you could there's no really other option. But Fr0zen's going to need something like that to hold off this aggression, though Naiman's hand isn't the greatest.
Right. We didn't see any Potion of Madness last game, but Naiman's hand really is not doing anything this game. He's going to need a lot of favors if he's going to take his way out of this one.
Wow. Well,
I would say that the Pirate Warrior is generally favored in the matchup as they just have such great power with their weapons, able to control the board and push minion chip damage. Priest can really struggle without Potion of Madness to deal with the early minions. But Fr0zen hit is only 1-drop in his deck, which is very favorable for him and allows him to keep up with the 1-drops.
Yeah. Naiman could technically turn this upgrade into an Assassin's Blade.
Okay, yeah.
Probably it just has to do that.
So if he swings at the Northshire Cleric, and it kind of counts as persisting 1 damage because the most likely play is Northshire Cleric trades into Southsea Deckhand and heals. So you can get it down to 4, but that doesn't really help you because you upgrade it to 2 and then have 1 in play. It just doesn't add up. So I don't really even like poking the Northshire Cleric. He just go all face.
I don't think he swings with the weapon though. I think you want to just have the
Okay.
as many 3 attacks as you want, or as you can, I should say.
It's a little dangerous because you do run a lot of weapons in the deck, and it can take time to disperse the charges.
I'm slightly surprised by this, that he didn't just go for more minions to deal with more stuff from his opponent, but I suppose the Netherspite Historian doesn't deal with this, so probably just needed something like a Death or a Pain just to deal with, like a Frothing, for instance.
Right, yeah. He's looking for answers, and 1/3, not a good answer. That is the Potion of Madness, which is quite powerful in the matchup, but not quite powerful on this board. But eventually, it usually comes into play, especially when combined with Priest of the Feast. Eat that cheesecake, gain some health.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting inclusions here, right? Because before you wanted all the dragon synergy, but now without any room in it, you had to put the Priest and the Feast in there, but it actually ends up working a lot better for you in a lot of matchups.
Mm-hmm. And Naiman ignoring the Cleric here so he can upgrade his weapon, take care of that 3/3 with the weapon, preserving as much power in play as possible.
And so even with a subpar hand, Naiman's still kind of getting it done, right? Pretty powerful weapon, going to be able to upgrade it even further the following turn. I mean, that upgrade, just a little hook, is going to turn into a 4/3 next turn.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he had a subpar hand in the beginning, but it really started shaping up. I think it landed the cultist into the next upgrade, into the Captain Greenscreen. It's just disgusting.
It's just slightly awkward, though, right? Because the instant you leave that Priest of the Feast stuff, he's just healing so much, so... The question is, can you ignore it? Can you just put your opponent on all minions here?
Well, what spells do they have that they could really heal with? A lot of times, you see them play... You have a 5/4 out there, they'd probably Shadow Word Death it. You got a 3/4 out there, they'd probably Shadow Word Pain it. I really don't hate just Greenskin all to the face. If they have a death, they probably don't have 2.
What if Fr0zen is mind gamesing you, and he has those cards, and he says, you know what, I'm going to be greedy and hope that you don't kill this guy.
See, but the issue with all of that is you have to spend your entire turn killing the minions. I mean, so you use 2 spells with Priest of the Feast, for example, right? You gain 6 life. Well, you just gained 6 life because you spent 6 damage killing a Priest of the Feast. So either way... Yeah, 7 because he overkilled it. So he even spent more damage that way. But the idea is this way you can get all of the value out of your weapon because Naiman has 8 additional damage. It's just locked inside this weapon. So he's okay giving up a little bit of damage now to kill the Priest of the Feast for the ability that the Priest of the Feast doesn't threaten to continue healing so he can unlock that damage potential later on.
Well, Fr0zen going to spend 2 mana to get a card out of this deck, and Naiman's pretty happy to see this. There's not a whole lot else to do here. I'm not even sure anything he picks up here can save him, even if he picked up Death, because there's 4 from the Naiman weapon, and there's another 8 in hand, so it's just 12. Even if everything dies, there's 12. Yeah. So, yeah, that will be game.
And that just makes that makes his play on the previous turn make even more sense when you look at it this way. You're like, well, I can kill the Priest of the Feast and set up lethal, so why not just do that?
Yeah. Fr0zen, he's saying, every single card in the Pirate Warrior kills me. I'm not feeling too good about life right now.
Yep, and that's going to be game 2. Naiman taking it with the Pirate Warrior over Fr0zen's Priest. Yeah, Priest not looking so hot.
Well, it's you mentioned this in our first series, right? You're talking about the Shaman versus the Paladin, and it basically comes down to the problem deck in these Conquest matchups. Can you get your problem deck out of the way? And for Fr0zen, it was his Priest, and for Naiman, it potentially could have been that Paladin, but he was able to get over the finish line there, and now it's looking pretty good.
This is a matchup where Priest oftentimes is seen as a favored because of Potion of Madness, and it's one of the matchups players strive to target with Priest, where in the general grand scheme of stats, comes out to Druid favored somehow still. But this is one of those aggro decks you can try and target with Priest. I imagine Fr0zen has included... We saw double Potion of Madness that game, so he has all of the anti-aggro tech, and he's looking to win this kind of matchup in particular. He seems to be targeting Token Druid with his lineup. He maybe has Priest and Taunt Warrior, and that's why Naiman kind of banned the Taunt Warrior. And then Fr0zen also has Shaman. Shaman can oftentimes be teched out very well to deal with aggro with things like Maelstrom Portal, the Hot Spring Guardian to be a taunt and a heal, Jinyu Water Speaker, a good body and a heal. So it's a deck that can do a lot of work against aggro. So he's got a plan.
Well, certainly Fr0zen is happy to see patches in the opening hand of Naiman here. But I want to go back to what you just mentioned as far as the Druid somehow coming out to a winning percentage. It brings me, I think the first time, or one of the first times people started realizing the difference between in theory and in practice is good old Secret Paladin versus Control Priest. Because in theory, the Priest was the favorite, right? It had all the answers for everything that Paladin possibly had even Light Bomb at that time. But in practice, Paladin just drew better every single time, and unless Priest had the exact answers for the exact problems every single time, it just wasn't going to be able to resist the onslaught.
Right, that's just the nature of reactive decks in a nutshell. It's a lot harder for a reactive deck to get a better win rate. They have to have a much better, tool set to be able to be the stronger deck, right? And Naiman here takes off the injured cleric to try and deny Fr0zen's ability to get value out of the hero power, just in case Fr0zen misses his drop on turn 3.
And this is obviously going to be Power of the Wild here. Unless you're taking that good old Naturalize in the deck. But you've already seen the Power of the Wild, so... anyway.
No Shadow Word Pain means that this guy is going to get growing. The Vicious Fledgling. If it doesn't get answered, it turns into a problem really quick.
Well, let's see what Naiman decides to go for here if he wants to buff it first. He can go for the Enchanted Raven into a Panther, I would imagine, and not a buff. And then go for the Mark of Lotus, turn that into a nice good old 4/4. Hit the face, perhaps get a bit of a buff there. Maybe Wind Fury. So
you'd like to see Wind Fury.
Like to see Wind Fury. Get the double
buff. To see that. Double buffs are really strong. Get the Wind Fury, then get the Divine Shield, then just go nuts.
He could double buff it if he doesn't think there's Shadow Word Death in the hand. But yeah, they're gonna go for this. He could just get the buff anyway, right? Especially on the health side of things.
Divine Shield 4/4s are very difficult for Priest to deal with.
Yeah. Well,
Fr0zen can answer the minion.
Yeah.
But at what cost?
All
of it, man.
Yeah, pretty big cost actually. I was gonna say
he's gonna need to take out a loan. This is awful. This is expensive.
I was gonna say he does develop the Fairy Dragon, but
yeah, okay, he's not even gonna take it out. He's gonna just let the vicious things happen.
Ooh, that Fledgling pretty vicious.
Yeah.
Okay, at least picking up the Divine Shield. That adapt just killed a Northern Cleric.
Yeah, let's keep adapting.
Does get the Wind Fury this time. Does get the Wind Fury.
Yeah. That'll kill him.
Yeah. Do it again. And
you do not want +1/+1 or attack, because that'll open it up to Shadow Word Death. So he is going to take Taunt and then just pave the way for the creature.
Can't target that minion, Naiman. I'm sorry.
You cannot swipe Fairy Dragons, unfortunately.
It comes up. It already has the adapt on it. It's already been adapted.
Yeah, if he just swipes the face, though, he can just trade into the Fairy Dragon, clear the opponent's minions. He can even Hero Power this turn, and then have swipe for the next turn alongside the Hero Power. Look at that. Vicious Fledgling has a decent chance of connecting for 8 again. It's 4/4. How does Priest even deal with that?
Ooh,
All Song Stealer. There you go.
And this is where, if you're Naiman, you kind of wish you played Living Mana last turn, because now you're coming up on Dragonfire Potion turn.
It's a much scarier turn to play your Living Mana. But what other choice does he have, really? He could kill the Cabal Songstealer and push 3. Now that doesn't seem like a play that wins the game very often.
Right. Especially when your opponent has a hero power that heals. Yeah, so it seems like it's just Living Mana and cross your fingers.
Right. And the reason why Aggro Druid is such a great deck is because stats-wise, they're not favored to have the AoE when you play Living Mana. So you win a lot of the time. But he's going to go with the Argus here, hoping to play around the Dragonfire Potion, I guess. I don't know. I feel like this is just a subpar play that loses to your opponent taking a trade and healing.
Right. And there's even just the oh, well, there's that as well. There's the Shadow Word Pain button. Yeah. Here's one of the weaknesses of Druid, right? Other than swipe, there's not a whole lot of burst. And so if you just clear the board, they cannot kill you. Speaking of the Druid.
He's going to hero power, then living mana. This still creates 7 living mana tokens, even after hero powering. You don't actually have to have the mana unused. So good technical play by Naiman there, squeezing in the hero power. Now this is the turn before Primordial Drake, so it's important timing. You don't want to do it post turn 8. You want to try and squeeze it in before then, and Fr0zen does not have the Dragonfire potion.
Alright, well, obviously there's 14 damage on board. If he heals his face, then even without the hero power, Fr0zen is going to die. Yeah. So it needs to find a way to do something here. The problem is once you start getting rid of these, you give your opponent the ability to utilize more mana, though he could just do it himself by trading in.
Right. If Fr0zen trades with one of the Treants, it gives Naiman 2 mana, which allows Naiman to hero power. So it only removes 1 damage. If you remove 1 damage from the board and then heal for 2, you're at 13. Naiman has 12 plus 1, that is equal to 13. You're dead. So he needs to find something that's not in his hand right now. Or he needs to trade Shadow Word Pain, heal. So he's going to first look for something better, not find it. Now he's going to trade Shadow Word Pain, heal, and hope Naiman does not have Roar, Power of the Wild, or any of those kind of buff cards.
So 10 on board.
Yeah, and Naiman doesn't have a buff card, so he's going to try and set up lethal with Swipe. Now Primordial Drake's going to come down. If he does that, he's not healing, and then Swipe over the top is going to kill him. Even if he does heal, he needs to heal for 3 and get rid of this whole board, which I think is borderline impossible.
Yeah. Fr0zen's going to hope that there's no direct damage in hand. Unfortunately, Naiman, or fortunately for Fr0zen's sake, great news for Naiman is that he has exactly that, and he's going to take this series 3 games to 0.
Yeah, 3-0. 3 aggro decks beating Dragon Priest, which is typically thought of as an anti-aggro deck, but even with Double Potion of Madness, just the fact that it's so reactive causes it to have negative win rates against Aggro Druid, negative win rates against Pirate Warrior, and it actually has positive win rates against Paladin, because Paladin's slow enough. But it's the standard Priest versus Aggro problem that's always existed in Hearthstone since 2014, really.
Yeah, you just don't have the exact answers to deal with it. And the thing is, people have gravitated toward this dragon list because the dragons give it enough power, so to speak, but it's kind of like a schizophrenic deck. You know, it's like, is it playing anti-aggro with the Potion of Madness? Is it playing a mid-range with its dragons? Is it going for even the late game with the Nether's Price Historians? But in the end, it's kind of not doing any of those things that great, and it falls in this kind of ugly position.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you guys are curious, our next match is going to be Tice versus Dr. Hippie. So one match you want to stick around to see.
Hopefully Dr. Hippie's back.
Yeah, that is true.
Who knows if his internet's stabilized by now.
He's had a couple hours to get that back online, so
yeah. Well,
certainly.
We're going to check in with Dr. Hippie and see if he's alive. And if he is, we'll have the next match for you. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Dr. Hippie versus Tice right after this.